Rain hammered the school roof like it was trying to break in. Loud, angry, unrelenting. The kind of rain that makes the night feel alive, like it's watching you. And in the middle of that long, empty hallway, a little girl's whisper sliced through the darkness. "Daddy, please stop them." Her voice trembled the way a candle shakes when a storm pushes under the door. Ava's tiny fingers clung to her father's shirt, and her eyes stayed locked on the three men stepping out of the shadows like they owned the world. Marcus Reed didn't move at first. He stood there in his old work boots, the ones with the laces frayed at the ends. His janitor's uniform was damp from the rain he escaped earlier, and the mop in his hand still dripped small puddles onto the floor. To anyone else, he looked tired, overworked, invisible. A man people passed by every day without ever seeing. But inside him, something old and dangerous stirred the moment those men appeared. Something he had buried so deep he prayed it died. The men laughed when they saw him. The kind of laugh that says, "You're nothing." One of them pointed at Marcus with his chin. "Move," he growled, because men like him always think they get to give orders. Always think their voice is the loudest in the room. Marcus didn't answer. His jaw tightened, and his hand gently pushed Ava behind him. That simple movement, so small, so soft, was the first warning, but the men were too blind to see it. A flicker of red from the glowing exit sign washed over their faces. The hallway smelled like dust, old books, and storm water dripping from Marcus's mop. The men stepped forward. One cracked his knuckles. One smirked as if this was a joke. The third one whispered, "Look at him, dude's shaking." But Marcus wasn't shaking. He was steady. Too steady. The kind of steady that comes before something snaps. A flash of lightning lit up the hallway, and that was all it took. 30 silent, furious seconds. That's all Marcus needed. The mop clattered to the floor, and before the sound even bounced off the lockers, Marcus moved like a shadow cutting through smoke. A fist slammed into a jaw. A knee cracked against a rib. A body flew into a row of lockers with a metallic scream. One man tried to pull out a blade, but Marcus grabbed his wrist, twisted, and dropped him like a stone. Another swung wildly, but Marcus dodged and sent him crashing through a glass display case. Shards sparkled across the floor like fallen stars. The third man lunged, but Marcus caught him midair and slammed him onto the tiles with a force that echoed all the way down the hallway. Then there was silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Ava ran to him, tears streaking down her cheeks. Marcus scooped her into his arms. Her tiny hands pressed into his chest, and he whispered into her hair, "You're safe now. I promise." But even he didn't fully believe it. Promises break under certain kinds of pressure. And outside, the pressure was already building. Through the rain-blurred windows, a slow-moving black SUV crept past the school. Not rushing. Not startled. Just watching. A shadow sat behind the tinted glass, still as stone. Then the SUV rolled away like a secret, leaving the scene of a crime. Marcus stood in the center of the chaos he'd created. 3 men groaning on the floor, glass crunching under his boots, the hallway lights flickering overhead, and he knew something he didn't want to say out loud. Someone had seen everything. Someone who knew what those moves meant. Someone who recognized the way he fought. He carried Ava down the hallway, her head tucked against his shoulder. She was quiet now, the kind of quiet that breaks a parent's heart because it means she's thinking too much for her age. Marcus grabbed his jacket, zipped it up around her to shield her from the cold, and walked out into the night like everything was normal. Like he was just a janitor finishing a shift. But the moment he stepped into the rain, he felt it, the old fear returning like a ghost brushing past his skin. He tried to shake it off. He told himself those men were just troublemakers. Random. Coincidence. But deep down, he knew better. Nothing about his life was random. Not anymore. The clock on his dashboard blinked 12:18 a.m. as he pulled away from the school. Ava fell asleep in the passenger seat, her hand still clutching his sleeve. He kept glancing at the rearview mirror, expecting headlights to follow him, but the road behind stayed empty. Too empty. Like the night was holding its breath. At home, he tucked Ava into bed, brushed the hair from her forehead, and kissed her good night. She whispered, half dreaming, "Daddy, you're not scared, right?" Marcus smiled the smile fathers use when they don't want their children to worry. No, baby. Not at all. But fear had already sunk into his bones like the cold after a storm. He stood in the dark kitchen, hands gripping the counter, listening to the distant thunder fading away. Every part of him wanted to believe this would be forgotten by morning. Kids would talk. Teachers would gossip. The principal would ask questions he'd pretend not to understand. But the truth would stay buried. Maybe. Hopefully. Possibly. But hope is fragile. And fear is loud. By sunrise, the rain had stopped. The world looked normal again. Too normal. Marcus stepped outside to take out the trash, and that's when he saw it. Tracks in the wet pavement where the black SUV had parked for a long time, tires sunk deep into the mud. Someone had waited outside his home before following him to the school. Someone patient. Someone careful. Marcus froze. A sparrow chirped on the power line above him. The sun rose like nothing was wrong. Kids waited for the school bus. Life looked calm. But calm is a lie. Because somewhere, in some office with cold lights and colder hearts, someone was replaying footage of a janitor fighting like a trained weapon. Someone was making calls. Moving pieces. Opening files that should have stayed locked forever. And Marcus Reed knew one thing with absolute certainty. The past he buried wasn't buried at all. It was awake. It was watching. And it was coming. Chapter 1 ends here, with a father holding onto a fragile piece, unaware that the next 24 hours would drag him back into a world he swore he'd never touch again. A world powerful people don't let you leave alive. Morning sunlight hit the school like the night before had been nothing more than a bad dream. Birdsong replaced thunder. Kids ran across the courtyard, laughing, backpacks bouncing. But Marcus felt the shift the moment he stepped inside the building. It was in the way conversations dropped to whispers when he walked by. In the way teachers paused with wide eyes before forcing a smile. Even the air felt heavier, like everyone was breathing the same rumor. 3 men found unconscious in a hallway. No weapons. No witnesses. No explanation. And yet, somehow, every person in that building had already decided it couldn't have been the janitor. Not the quiet black man pushing a mop and keeping his head down. Not the one who never raised his voice and always stepped aside when people brushed past him like he was part of the furniture. No, a man like that couldn't have done it. So in their minds, something else must be true. Something darker. Marcus could feel their theories crawling across his skin with every step. He moved down the hall with his cleaning cart, trying to pretend he didn't hear the whispers. He had to have been military. No, I heard he was locked up before. You don't move like that unless you've been inside. Those guys were big. How does a janitor take them down? Marcus ignored it. He had learned long ago that when the world wants a story, it will create one, even if the truth is standing right in front of them holding a broom and minding his business. But Ava felt it too. She walked close to him that morning, her small hand gripping the strap of her backpack like she wished she could hide inside it. Her eyes flicked nervously between the adults staring at her father. She wasn't used to being seen like this. Not with fear. Not with suspicion. Before she went to class, she tugged at Marcus's sleeve. "Daddy, did we do something wrong?" He knelt, looked her in the eyes, and whispered, "No, baby. People just talk when they don't understand things." But even as he said the words, his heart tightened. Because people who don't understand things often become dangerous. Near lunchtime, the building's normal rhythm began to crumble. It started small. A soft crackle over the intercom. Lights flickering once, then returning. But Marcus felt the shift instantly. He had spent years learning to read danger in the smallest tremors. And something about the air felt off. Too still. Too quiet. Like the building was holding its breath. While cleaning the science wing, he glanced up at the corner security camera. The red light that always blinked, steady as a heartbeat, was off. Dead. He checked the next hallway. Same thing. And the next. Every camera in the east wing was suddenly dark. Some kids would swear later that a cold draft swept through the halls, but Marcus didn't need a ghost story to know what was happening. Someone was here. Someone who needed privacy. Someone who didn't want to be recorded. Someone who knew exactly where Marcus worked. A soft vibration buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from Ava. Just 3 words. Something's wrong. Please come. His stomach dropped. He didn't waste a second. He sprinted down the hall, boots pounding against the tile, pushing past students who turned with startled faces. To them, he was running too fast for a janitor. Too precise. Too focused. But Marcus didn't care what they thought. All he saw was his daughter's text glowing on the screen. The gym smelled of sweat and floor polish. The door creaked as Marcus pushed it open, and the moment he stepped inside, he knew he was not alone. 2 men in dark suits stood in the center of the court. The polished wood reflected their silhouettes like something out of a nightmare. They weren't teachers. They weren't police. They weren't here for school business. They were here for him. "You didn't think we'd lose you forever, did you?" one of them said. His voice was calm, but there was poison in the way he smiled. The other man didn't speak. He just cracked his neck slowly, staring at Marcus with cold eyes. Ava peeked from behind the bleachers, her hands shaking, her breathing shallow. Marcus positioned himself between her and the men, instinct taking over. "I'm done with that life," he said softly. The words were barely more than a breath, but the weight behind them could have crushed stone. The men exchanged a slow look. Then they smiled. "We're not," the first one whispered. The way he said it made every hair on Marcus's arms rise. They weren't just here to talk. They weren't here to take him quietly. They wanted a reaction. They wanted control. For a moment, no one moved. The gym was silent except for the faint echo of a basketball bouncing somewhere far down the hall. Then the tension snapped like a wire. One man stepped forward. Marcus didn't wait for the second to follow. He grabbed Ava's hand and pulled her with him, sprinting toward the door. "Run!" he shouted. And she did. Her tiny feet hit the floor fast, her breath sharp and ragged. Behind them, the 2 men shouted orders. Heavy footsteps thundered against the gym floor. Marcus shoved through the door, pulling Ava into the hallway. Students screamed as they saw the suited men chasing him. Phones flew into the air, recording, capturing every moment, every panic-filled step. Doors slammed shut. Teachers yelled. But the chaos grew louder, bigger, unstoppable. Marcus didn't look back. He couldn't. If he saw how close those men were, his mind might freeze, but his body couldn't afford that. His only job was to get Ava away. To put walls between her and whatever nightmare had finally caught up. They burst out the back exit, sunlight blinding them. A group of students eating lunch outside scattered when they saw Marcus drag his daughter past the picnic tables. The 2 men followed, shouting into earpieces, calling for backup. Ava stumbled, but Marcus lifted her into his arms without slowing. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might crack his ribs. He reached the far edge of the field, ducked behind the equipment shed, and pressed his back to the wall. Ava clung to him, her breath shaky. "Daddy, who are they?" she whispered. Marcus closed his eyes. He wanted to lie. He wanted to say, "Nobody." But lies don't protect children. Truth does. Still, he wasn't ready. Not yet. "People I used to know," he said quietly. "People who shouldn't be here." He peered around the corner. The men were searching the field, shouting into radios. The school alarms blared. Students cried. And Marcus knew, deep in the place where instinct lives, that this wasn't going away. This wasn't a warning. This was phase 1. He carried Ava toward the street, weaving through teachers trying to maintain order. Police sirens screamed in the distance. Students filmed everything, narrating wild theories into their phones. But Marcus didn't care about the rumors or the shock or the panic. All he cared about was the truth pressing heavy in his chest. His past wasn't done with him. And whatever storm was coming next, it wasn't going to stop at the school. It was coming for everything he loved. Dawn rolled in slow, soft, almost gentle, like the world was trying to pretend nothing had happened. Birds skimmed the morning air. Car engines hummed on their way to work. Neighbors swept their porches like it was any other day. But Marcus felt the difference before he even opened his eyes. A pressure. A heaviness. A silence that didn't belong. He sat up on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the sunlight crawling across the floor. Ava was still asleep, curled on her side, hugging her stuffed bear like she always did when she was scared. The nightmares had crept back during the night, soft cries, tossing, little hands searching the air for him. He stayed beside her until she settled. But even then, he couldn't sleep. Not fully. Not with the feeling that something was moving toward them, slow but steady, like a tide he couldn't stop. He walked to the kitchen, rubbing the tension out of his neck. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet, the same familiar creak they made every morning. But today, the sound felt louder, sharper. Like each board was warning him to prepare. He poured himself a glass of water, hand steady even though his heart wasn't. And then he heard it, not loud, not rushed, but heavy. A deep vibration rolling through the street. Engines. Many of them. Marcus froze. He walked to the window, lifted the blinds an inch, and felt his throat tighten. A full motorcade turned onto his block, black SUVs, tinted windows, government plates. The kind of convoy people only see in movies or when someone powerful comes to town. His neighbors stepped out onto their porches. Phones lifted immediately. Curtains twitched. Someone whispered, "Lord, who are they here for?" The motorcade slowed, engines rumbling like a warning, until it stopped right in front of his building. Ava appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" Her voice was small, fragile. He turned, trying to erase the fear on his face before she saw it. "No, baby," he said softly. "But things are about to change." The sound of car doors opening echoed across the neighborhood, sharp, synchronized, controlled. Not police. Not local. This was something bigger. Marcus stepped outside with Ava holding his hand. The morning sun reflected off the black SUVs like mirrors hiding secrets. Every neighbor was filming now. Some in shock. Some in fear. Some whispering his name like they suddenly realized they had never actually known the man who mopped their school floors. The lead SUV door opened. A woman stepped out wearing a crisp navy suit, her posture straight, her expression calm. She wasn't holding a weapon. She wasn't barking orders. She walked toward Marcus with controlled steps, like someone approaching a man of importance, not a threat. Not a suspect. A man who mattered. When she reached him, she bowed her head slightly. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice respectful. "Director Hayes has been looking for you for 7 years." A hush fell over the entire street. Even the birds went silent. Ava tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Daddy, who's that?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. The name Hayes hit him like a forgotten wound reopening. It pulled up memories he had spent years trying to bury, the missions no one talked about, the nights they slipped into places no normal soldier would ever go, the order he refused, the lives he saved instead. And the price he paid for disobeying. The woman watched his reaction with eyes that understood too much. "You saved 3 children that night," she said quietly, stepping closer so only he could hear. "We never forgot, even if the world was told to." Marcus swallowed hard, his chest tightening. Ava stared up at him like she was seeing someone she didn't recognize. "Those men yesterday," the woman continued, "weren't random. They were remnants of the covert unit you exposed. Men who want revenge. Men who don't care who gets hurt in the process." Ava pressed herself against Marcus's side, fear rising again. Marcus steadied his voice. "I walked away. That life is over." The woman nodded gently. "And you stayed gone longer than any of us expected. But yesterday, you showed the world you're not just a janitor." She paused, letting the words settle. "You took down 3 armed fugitives with nothing but instinct. No hesitation. No backup. That kind of skill doesn't disappear." The door of the last SUV opened, and agents stepped out, but they didn't surround him. They didn't handcuff him. They stood like an honor guard, waiting. Watching. "The director requests your presence," the woman said. "Immediately." The crowd gasped. Mothers pulled their kids back like something holy or dangerous was happening. Men whispered, "He was military, wasn't he?" Someone muttered, "No, this is deeper than military." The street crackled with confusion. Ava looked up at her father, eyes wide. "Daddy, is she telling the truth? Were you a hero?" Marcus knelt in front of her, heart breaking at the innocence in her question. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I did things," he whispered. "Some I'm proud of, some I'm not." His voice trembled. "But everything I did, I thought it was for the right reasons." She hugged him tightly. "You saved me," she said softly. "That makes you a hero." Marcus closed his eyes. Those simple words almost brought him to his knees. Because for years, he believed he protected her by hiding who he was. By pretending to be ordinary. By shrinking himself until no one could see the man the world once feared and respected. But clearly, someone still saw him. The woman stepped closer. "Mr. Reed, this isn't a request. The men who came for you yesterday are only the beginning. We intercepted chatter this morning. They have your name. They have your daughter's name. If you stay here, your entire neighborhood becomes a battlefield." Ava's hand tightened around his. Her breath hitched. Marcus stood slowly, jaw clenched, eyes burning with a mix of anger and something deeper, resolve. "If I go," he said, "what happens to her?" The woman gestured toward another SUV. "We've arranged protection. A safe location. She'll be guarded more heavily than the president's own family." The neighborhood erupted into whispers. Someone said, "This man ain't who we thought he was." Another whispered, "Maybe he's more." Marcus exhaled, long and heavy, like releasing 7 years of running in one breath. He looked at the motorcade, at the agents waiting, at his daughter who trusted him without question. He thought of the life he tried to build, the quiet one, the simple one. The one he hoped would erase the shadows of his past. But shadows don't disappear. They follow you until you face them. He took Ava's hand and walked forward. The world watched a janitor transform into someone they didn't have a name for yet. And deep inside, Marcus felt it, the truth he had been avoiding finally rising to the surface. He wasn't being pulled back into his past. His past had come to collect him. And now, the entire nation was about to learn exactly who Marcus Reed really was. The sun had barely cracked the horizon when the motorcade rolled through the quiet neighborhood. Engines low, windows black, tires whispering against the pavement. It wasn't the kind of street that ever saw wealth, power, or luxury. Most kids here grew up thinking sirens and second jobs were normal. But this morning, it looked like Washington, D.C. itself had driven straight into poverty. Inside the small 2-room house, Malik sat at the edge of his son's bed, exhaustion hanging on him like a wet coat. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw fists, broken glass, and the look of pure terror on little DJ's face at the gas station. He kept replaying it, the moment he stood between his son and danger, the moment he realized that a janitor's bare hands sometimes had to do a warrior's job. DJ blinked up at him, sleepy, curls messy, voice small. "Daddy, why are there big cars outside?" Malik didn't know. But something inside him tightened, instinct, fear, maybe both. A knock thundered through the house. Not a neighbor's knock. Not a landlord's knock. A knock that said, "Open up." Malik stepped to the door, shoulders squared, ready for whatever new storm life wanted to throw at him. But when he opened it, the storm wasn't what he expected. A man in a charcoal suit stood there. Tall, calm, eyes assessing but respectful. Behind him sat 3 black SUVs and a limousine. "Mr. Malik Turner?" "Yes." "My name is Director Harlan Brooks. I'm with the State Executive Office. May we come in?" Malik swallowed. "Sir, did something happen? Am I in trouble?" "No. Quite the opposite." Inside, the suited men didn't sit. Didn't wander. They waited, hands behind their backs, forming a quiet wall of discipline. DJ stared at them with awe, gripping his father's arm. Director Brooks opened a leather folder and slid out a newspaper. It showed a grainy security camera still. Malik standing barefoot outside the gas station, one arm around his son, the other raised defensively as 3 grown men surrounded him. The headline: "Janitor protects child from armed assailants, stops 3 men alone." Malik stared. His breath hitched. I didn't know they printed this." "They did. And the governor saw it." The governor. Malik blinked. Why? Brooks lowered his voice, the tone shifting into something solemn. Because bravery like yours isn't common. And because the men you stopped weren't random attackers. He paused. They were wanted suspects connected to a long-standing investigation. You stopped 3 dangerous people that law enforcement hadn't cornered in months. Malik's jaw dropped. Brooks continued, We came because the governor is offering you and your son something. A chance to start fresh. Safely. And with dignity. DJ whispered, Daddy, are they taking you away? Malik knelt immediately. Never, baby. Never. Brooks stepped forward. Mr. Turner, we are offering you full state protection, relocation if you choose, and a position working with our community safety outreach team. He slid forward another document. And a scholarship fund for your son. Malik couldn't speak. 4 years, he had scrubbed floors that rich men walked across without a glance. He had folded grocery bags tight so they wouldn't break on the walk home. He had worked night shifts that carved hollows under his eyes, also DJ could have a better future, someday. But someday had always felt like a fairy tale. Sir, Malik finally whispered, I think you came to the wrong man. I'm just a janitor who got scared and did what any father would do. Brooks shook his head gently. No. Many men would have frozen. Many men would have pleaded. You didn't. You fought. Not because you're violent, but because love made you fearless. DJ looked at his dad with pride so pure it shimmered in the morning light. My daddy's a hero, he said softly. Something inside Malik cracked open, something he had kept locked away ever since life had started grinding him down. Hope. Real hope. But he stayed quiet for a long moment. What if I fail? He asked. Brooks gave a small smile. Heroes usually think that. That's how we know they're the real ones. The room fell into a stillness, the kind that feels like a door opening between past and future. Malik finally exhaled. If this means my son will be safe, if this means he'll have a future I never had, then yes. I'll accept. Brooks nodded once, approving, respectful. But before the men left, DJ tugged Malik's sleeve. Daddy, what happened last night, it won't happen again, right? Malik lifted his son into his arms. No, baby. That was the last time fear controlled our life. The motorcade escorted them through the neighborhood. Curtains lifted. People peered out. Cars slowed. Everyone had heard. Everyone had seen the article. For the first time, no one saw Malik as the janitor, the invisible man mopping floors at 3 a.m. They saw him as a father who faced 3 men alone. A man whose dignity could not be stepped on. A man whose love changed the story. Inside the limousine, DJ rested his head on Malik's chest. Daddy, are we going somewhere new? Malik kissed his forehead. No matter where we go, son, we're going somewhere better. The car pulled away, sunlight pouring across the windshield like a blessing. And the narrator's voice, the one black voices always closes with, rises softly. In life, strength isn't measured by muscles, money, or status. Strength is measured by the choices we make when someone we love is in danger. And sometimes, the smallest boy can teach a grown man the biggest lesson. That love, real love, makes warriors out of ordinary people.